I'm Gerard back with you, and today we're playing with a 52 TD. This is an MG, this is a Rob. Let's get going. So the owner of this TD contacted me after having already had an appointment to have the balance checked on the wheels and alignment done, because it had the little TD vibration that tends to be in these things, because oftentimes the wheels aren't running all that true anymore. But the guy that was doing that isn't too far from me, and he wanted to go ahead and take it from there straight into here if he could, to have me look at the carbs and timing, make sure it's running as good as he can, get it to run. Now what I like to do before I open the bonnet, I like to put a towel on the other side so that when this lays over, you don't have to worry about scratching anything. It's just one of the things I like to do. I already took the air intake and air cleaner off of it. Now my first check is always make sure there is oil in both carburetors. So we can do that by lifting up and feeling the resistance. These have weighted pistons, no springs in them, like the later cars do. And now this one here, the oil does feel like there's plenty of oil in there, but it feels like it's kind of lightweight oil, maybe not quite heavy enough. And this one feels like there's hardly anything at all in it. So that'll be kind of the first thing. And then I'll take the tops of the carburetors off, all the dash pots. We'll take a look at the needles and the jets and see if they're all even. So we take it off, and one thing we're looking at is for that step in the needle here to be even with the bottom here. Now, that means it's not quite even. It's hanging out just a little bit. Now we'll see what this one looks like. Oh, it's hanging slightly. And yeah, that one is even. So we'll adjust that other one to be even just like this one as our starting point. So the next things we're going to be looking at is the actual jet in here. It's hard to see from the angle, but how far down is it on both, and are they even? Easiest way to measure that actually is with a set of dial calipers, if you happen to have one, which I do have from my days of working in a precision sheet metal shop. So we would just let that hit the base there, make sure you're even, and then see where we're at. So we're at 100 and about 23 thousandths. And this one here, we're at about 125, so that's quite even. Now at this point, I'm going to want to go ahead and check valve adjustment real quick, just to make sure nothing's out of whack. Doesn't feel like it is, but not a bad idea to double check it, because that's the only way you're going to properly tune carbs, is if valves are adjusted properly to start with. Now I'm not going to go through full valve adjustment here on this video, but they want to be done to 12 thousandths hot. And right now, since I just took it for a test drive and he dropped it off not that long ago, it's already warm. So we're good there. Now you want to run this on what they call the rule of 9. Basically you can count back here. Whenever one of them, like when this one's all the way down, you count that like 1, 2, 3, 4. Start back over 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. This would be the one you'd be adjusting. And you do that all the way through as you rotate the motor over. And you can do 2 at a time. Now an easy way to remember this basically is split the motor right here. And you can go from the front to the back here. Whichever one's down here, the exact mirror image one is going to be here. So if this one's down, you'll adjust this one. If this one's down, you adjust this one. If this one's down, you adjust this one, and so on and so forth. That's an easy way to remember it. So the valves were all well within reason, not enough to actually get excited about adjusting them. Now, one thing I like to do when you go to tighten these down, I clean them first, by the way. When you tighten them down, have no oil at all on them. That way you can see, make sure that it comes down with a nice thud. Because sometimes you tighten it down, it won't come down to a nice thud, and you can just kind of do a quick moving around and try it again. If you never get it to do that, then you're gonna have to recenter the jets. So we got that done. I'll top these things off with some oil. I tend to just use 2050 motor oil. Same things we put in the crankcase, works just fine. And then we can start it up and see what we got. I'm gonna guess at this point that it might be set up running a little bit rich at idle. The 120 thousandths down seems like quite a bit. And it's probably due to the fact that they had lightweight oil in it, and they might have been effectively compensating for the lightweight oil and not getting as much basically like accelerator pump action or enrichment from the oil slowing it down. Now, it's not terribly uncommon to see the caps, the damper rod caps, loosening off as you're driving on these things, on any of them, doesn't matter what year you're talking about. And if you're having a problem with that, one of the things you can do is actually take the gasket out. That allows you to get more thread engagement and get to tighten up a little bit more without coming loose. Now, if you do see much of a difference in the air through these and you have to adjust it very much, you should always loosen off one of those clamp bolts so that they're working independently of each other. Set the idle speed and then reclamp that. So it was checking just a tad rich, and I leaned it up just a little bit, like 2 flats each one. It is revving a little bit better now. It was wanting to stumble a little bit before. So minor adjustment, but does help it run a little better. Now, one of these days I will do a video on timing, but not until I get a new timing light, because this thing is a complete pain in the butt because there's a broken wire somewhere here. So I constantly have to work it and try to get it to where it's working. So I'm not doing that on film because it sucks. But if the timing marks are to be believed, we got 37 degrees initial timing at idle, which is a whole lot more than what we want. We only want to see, well, these things I think about 4 degrees, and then we're looking at closer to 30-ish at the top end. So yeah, we've got some adjusting to do here, and then we'll see how well it runs. So now this obviously isn't like a rebuild engine or anything, but sometimes you just gotta get the best at both ends of the timing you can get, because the distributors aren't always giving you everything they're supposed to give you, and they need rebuilds. But what we got here now is we got about 7 degrees initial timing, and it goes up to about 29 degrees. And we'll take that on this one. If you have way too much initial timing in it like that, you could end up having overheating issues, because you don't want the timing to be way off at either end of the spectrum. You could end up with overheating issues sitting at idle or on the road, depending on what the timing is doing. So sometimes overheating issues is timing, not cooling system. I've readjusted the idle, because when you change the timing, it's going to change the idle. But that sounds pretty good. We'll take that for now. Now, I don't like to trust the tack on the car. This one here, we're going to go ahead and try to set this down around 850, 900 range. And that's usually pretty good for these to not run on. Like how we'll bump it up. We sometimes you have to play with it a little bit because they're going to hunt. And then of course go back and make sure that you're even on the carbs. Right now the tach and on the dash says we're at about 1600 RPMs. So that's why I always like to use my timing light to set the idle rather than the tach. So the owner also said he had a bit of a banging noise over bumps, which I heard when I was test driving. My road's actually a pretty good road for testing that. It's not the smoothest road in the world. That's why I just go on down and test drive on other roads, not mine. But let's get this thing up in the air and see if it's something we can see as an easy fix or not. So now we're under the car. Now, early TEDs and the TCs, this link here just was bent over and pushed through a rubber bushing, and they can pull out of those bushings. So this is one place you don't want good pull-out game. Some people will end up doing is putting a washer in there, drilling a hole through it, and then cotter pinning it so it doesn't want to pull out of there. But this has the later shocks where they're bolt on, just like MGA, MGB. Now we can see obviously we got a little bit of a leak in this shock here. And what I was noticing, I believe what we got here is we're basically just bottoming out, hitting the edge of this against right there on the body. So we could probably pull the body, bend it out just a little bit so it clears, and that might stop the noise. So it's probably, we're probably hitting the bump stop here, and it's catching there, or it's catching there before it hits the bump stop. So that would be an easy fix. We can just kind of pull this out a little bit so it doesn't catch anymore, and that might fix the noise. So after taking this thing on a quick test drive, that noise is still back here in the left rear. After taking a closer look at it, the actual cause of the problem is something really simple and stupid. Yeah, the suspension is bottoming out, and then that thing rattles.